Chris and the rest of the team were instrumental in the resolution of this problem. And as a result of that intervention, just Kusile today is trending at an energy availability factor of just shy of 93%. So that's an exceptional achievement for this team. And I really want to say thank you very much, Chris, to you and the team. Please continue to do the excellent work. I'm making a bigger point. What is the bigger point is that we have been deliberate on how to quickly to return these 3 units, 1, 2, and 3. And as a result of returning them early as per plan, we've gotten the benefit of an additional 2,400 megawatts, and those are contributing to the resolution of this problem. So the point I'm making is that all of these efforts are orchestrated. There's nothing sudden about what you are seeing today. And in fact, the picture looks even exceptionally better. What is it? I'm happy to say to the country, as I stand before you today, the energy availability factor of Eskom has breached the 70% mark. So we're at 70.78. That's significant. The last time we achieved this was in August 2021. Thank you to the men and women of Eskom. The exceptional work, starting with the chair of the board, Dr. Mteto, and the collective of men and women who are committed to the resolution of this problem. The members of the board who are bringing their expertise, their knowledge that has been accumulated over many years, and they've put that to the service of the country. And we are beginning to see this picture. And thank you very much to Dan Marokani, the group CEO, Mr. Bekin Numalo, and the rest of the team. And that's why we're here at Kusile, we'll be at Kendal, we'll be visiting all these power stations to say to the team, please continue at it and make sure that you help us to present this picture. Of course, the months to date, the statistics suggest that we're at 64.34%, and the year to date we're at 59.92, just shy of 60%. But we have breached the psychological mark of 70%, as I stand before you, as a result of this consistent performance. This is a deliberate performance, has been orchestrated, and I'll show you what the trend line is. Where have we recovered these additional megawatts? This has happened over a period of time. It stretches from the appointment of this current board in October of 2022. It gets to be codified in the Energy Action Plan unveiled by President Ramokgopa a few months earlier than the appointment of this board, in about July of 2022. The appointment of the minister in the presidency responsible for electricity, the stabilization of the management team, the introduction of incentive performance-related incentive bonuses, the isolation of critical stations that required attention, and Kusile was one of those. And as I stand before you, I did say that Kusile is trending close to 93%, when in fact we had initially characterized it as one of the problem statement stations, rather, a focused attention, and that's why we are seeing the kind of numbers that we are seeing. As I stand before you, we are 47 days into no load shedding and counting. So this is significant. And of course, we have seen that in the public domain, there are those who are beginning to find their voice. They've been here at Eskom. They were meant to achieve these numbers because of exceptional levels of incompetence, the flag bearers of underperformance. They have not been able to achieve this. Now, when it is achieved, they are finding their voice. So it's important that we dampen those voices, that we are able to illustrate in numbers the kind of achievement, exceptional achievement that has been attained by these competent men and women, dedicated and patriotic to the resolution of the load shedding question. And I've said to the country, we are going to restore this Eskom, this badge. Its glory will be restored. And the best way of restoring it, as I've been saying to the team at Eskom, is to ensure that we are able to resolve the energy crisis in the country. What do we know also about the other indicators? That essentially what we have achieved, our unplanned capacity loss factor, the rate at which these units are failing, at which these units are unreliable, that has been reduced by about 4,000 megawatts since the 26th of April. And this is due to extensive maintenance. So what's the point we're making? We had said previously to the country, you remember that reference when I say short-term pain, long-term gain, aggressive maintenance led recovery plan is beginning to yield fruits. When we went into December of 2023, transitioning into January of 2024, we reached the highest levels of maintenance, planned maintenance, in the period of 3 years. We took out 18% of the total generation capacity into planned maintenance. And these units are coming back. And we had said that we are going to use the periods of low demand to ensure that we go aggressively into planned maintenance as we prepare ourselves for the winter period. And of course, as we enter into this winter, these units are coming back, and we are seeing these numbers exemplified by what Chris and the team has achieved here in Kusile. They are now at about 93%. Like I said, for the day now as I stand before you, we are at 70.78%. So that's significant. And as a result of this improvement, it means that there is little reliance on the open cycle gas turbine. By that I mean we're using less and less of diesel. And I'm going to show you also in the rand value. Because what we are told in the public domain, for those who have been unable to achieve this kind of exceptional performance, for those who suggest that this improvement is sudden, they want to deposit into the public domain that the results of this improvement is on the back of the burning of diesel. There could be nothing further from the truth. This is anchored by, if you like, base load. This is anchored by these machines that are at Kusile and many other power stations. From here, we're going to Kendal, and then for the first time in a long period, we had ran about 6 units. Some of them have been out on long-term planned maintenance. These units have returned. And as they return these units, they are giving us the kind of performance that we are seeing. And this has decreased significantly, if you like, the load factor of the OCGT from what was previously 19.13% to now what is 6.8%. So we have reduced it by about 13 percentage points, just to illustrate that what anchors this recovery is really the performance of this coal-fired power station. And again, like I said, our planned capacity, PCLF, planned maintenance, of course, it reached highs in December of 2023, transitioning into 2024. Of course, we've averaged over the past 4 months about 16.25%. Something that has not been seen over a period of time. And this is as a result of an orchestrated effort on the part of government. Of course, ESCOM is an antenna, an extension of government. The fiscal support that we received from National Treasury was placed to good use, and that's why you are beginning to see the kind of improvements that we are seeing to ensure that indeed we are able to achieve the results that we are seeing. So what's the point I'm making? The point I'm making is that all of these things is planned, all of these things is orchestrated, all of these things is deliberate. There is nothing sudden about what you are seeing. And as I've been saying to the country consistently, even when we reach the highs of stage 6 load shedding, I said, bear with us. We feel your pain. We hear your cries. We understand your frustration, but we know what you are doing. Just believe us. And of course, the majority of the South Africans believe this story. And we are beginning to see that, in fact, this is something that is born out of a serious consideration by engineers at ESCOM to say that we need to suffer this pain for us to be able to achieve the kind of results that we are seeing going into the future. So that's very, very important for us to have this appreciation. And what are the other things that we know? so that we're able to dismantle this public narrative that is attempting to find root. And its sole intention really is to soil the work that the ESCOM team has done. The ESCOM team in its totality, from the board to the lowest member of ESCOM, including the cleaners, playing an important role in the resolution of this question. So we know that in our stable now, we are beginning to see consistent performers, those who are really carrying, if you like, the majority of the weight, as we are fixing other power stations that are problematic. What are those consistent performers? Kusile now is in that category. Letabo has been in that category. Majuba in that category, Matla and Midupi. And of course, Midupi and Kusile, you expect them to be in that category because they are our newest power stations. But having said that, Chris and the team must remain at it, focused, transfixed on the resolution of this problem, ensuring that we are able to have the megawatts that is required to get the country out of this difficult situation. And of course, the picking plans. I mean, just to give you an appreciation, year to date, of Midupi, Letabo, and the picking plans. The picking plans are important because they must be available when we need them. In a case of emergency, they must be available. And that's why you need to track their availability factor. All of these things have been trending greater than 70%, these power stations. They've been trending over 70%. They are carrying a number of us. And of course, we've been able to reduce the number of trips, the excessive trips. You can see that by March of 2022, the number of trips were about 697. When you go to March of 2023, you know that the calendar year 2023, we had the most intense calendar year of load shedding. And in fact, even the financial year. And that's not surprising that that number was sitting at 736. The rate at which these units are failing. Look at where we are. We are at 593, even much better than what was the situation in March of 2022. So all this thing can happen as a result of a deliberate and orchestrated effort to resolve the energy crisis. There is nothing sudden about this. It's been patient investment, and this investment is yielding fruit. We are beginning to get the dividends of these investments, and those dividends are shared with the greater South African economy, households, and industry. And that's why we are seeing this kind of picture that we are seeing. So we are not necessarily out of the woods yet. We need to ensure that we bring these other power stations to the levels of Kusile, Letabo, and Majuba and Midupi, so that across the entire fleet, when you use station by station, we should be above 70%, so that you don't have a disproportionate amount of weight carried by particular power stations when you have, when in fact you have perennial underperformance. And what we are trying to show here is that we are also beginning to see additional improvements in other additional power stations. And just to mention them, Arnott, Camden, Hendrina, and Grootvlei. These 4 power stations are important for the following reasons. The first one is that they are some of our oldest power stations. So they are at 64.8%, the EAF, of these power stations. Trending higher than what has been the year-to-date EAF. So they are performing above average. What is the first importance of this power station is that they are some of our oldest power stations. Why is that important? It's to dispel the myth that the older you get, the less you perform. It's not backed by science. That's the first one. No, I'm talking power stations, not in other arenas. In other areas, you'll need boosters and other things. No, I'm talking power stations. I see the audience is naughty. Yes. And then the second powerful statement is that these power stations like Camden and the like, they were on course to be closed in the next 2-3 years. And yet they are performing at those levels. So it reaffirms the validity of our argument that when we are faced with conditions of crisis, of energy deficit, you need more of these machines for as long as they can perform to add their weight. And this is not to detract from our commitment to the nationally determined contribution, the decarbonization effort, is that you must balance this. You must address the issues of energy access. You must address the issues of energy sovereignty. You must address the issues of the environment. And then you must address, I want to argue, because globally they say that's the nexus, the three: access, sovereignty, and also the environment. I want to add the fourth one, to give it South African characteristics. The fourth variable of the nexus is the socio-economic impact of the decisions. So you need to pull all of these things together, answer all of these questions. Don't answer one and leave the other out, so that you are able to have a total picture, and that's what we are seeing. And of course, there's a contribution by the renewables. During the day, when we go into winter, we're going to have clear skies, the sun will be out making a contribution. So I think it's important that we have an appreciation of the totality of the picture, so that there's no binary conversation, because others want to drag us into that binary conversation. Outside what the incompetent have been saying about us being saved by diesel, then they say we're also saved by renewables. No, this is part of the aggregate picture. So you read all of these things together and not one over the other. And this, I think, is a perfect picture. It shows you that what has been the situation from April of last year. So you can see that consistently we've been coming down. Our target was to achieve 65%. Of course, we didn't achieve it. But the picture show, and then we wanted to recover about 3,115 megawatts. And then you can see the stations that have contributed. Stations like Matla, Majuba, Kusile, I've mentioned what Kusile has done, has contributed to that picture over a period of time. We invested our time, resources, energies, and skills to ensure that this gets to be addressed. And that's why the trend line shows from April of 2023, on the back of the Energy Action Plan, this thing has been orchestrated, and the support that we've been receiving, and then the results are yielding now. We are not yet out of the woods, but we are beginning to see concrete results that are beginning to bear fruit. So it's important that we address this. And of course, there have been lowlights. Not everything has been rosy. You know that there's been delays in the return of Quebec Unit number 1. The outage slips, we were 6 months later than what we had promised the country would be the period of returning of Quebec Unit number 1. And we are taking those lessons and experience from Quebec Unit number 1. We are using those experiences and learnings into going into Quebec number 2. So there are things that must be unlearned from how we did Quebec number 1. And that's why we are confident about the return within the prescribed period of Quebec number 2. And of course, Kusile number 5 was in sync in December. Of course, approximately 3 months of delay. So these are some of the things that have soiled or dampened the mood. And of course, the amount of multiple cluster of units failing at the time, which necessitated the intensification of load shedding. So the point I'm making is that whilst the trend line is positive, there has been a period of momentary setbacks. So those are not strategic defeats. Those are momentary setbacks, and we're able to recover out of that. So the point I'm making to the country is that we have accepted that in the nature of these engineering units, you are going to suffer those setbacks. But what we are doing now is to create a buffer to make it possible that even in instances where you suffer these setbacks, you either don't have to initiate load shedding, or the intensity of that initiation is not beyond stage 2, stage 3, which is what the winter outlook was saying. I think that's an important part to appreciate. And then on the next slides here, so what we are showing you is what is the situation now. So remember that the financial year runs from April, the 1st of April in 1 year, to the 31st of March the following year. So where are we? So I've shown you the picture in the last financial year to show you that the trend line were much closer to that recovering of that 3,115 megawatts. So where are we now? April. So essentially, we're talking April of 2024. We are going into March, but we have only been in this financial year. We can only account for April and a bit of May until today. So what are we seeing? We are seeing that the EAF of 58.5% is an improvement from what we had experienced in the similar in March of 2024. So the last month of the last financial year, the EAF was sitting at 54.45%. And then 2 months later, when you enter into the new financial year, we're at 58.5. So essentially over that period, we've added 4 percentage points. So again, you are beginning to see that this trend line is sustained. That's important. It is sustained. There are no significant reversals. And that's why you see the EAF of where we are. And of course, we have not seen any load shedding. Of course, everyone can account. Of course, there's an area that requires attention. It's a failure of municipal infrastructure, the distribution infrastructure. And I've said on multiple points that it is important that we address the issues of illegal connection, that we replenish, invest in maintenance on those the infrastructure, because there are communities in the country that although you have not experienced load shedding, they have been in the dark for sustained period of time. And I did say in the last briefing that we are engaging with SALGA and these municipalities to find the best way out of this situation. And we know that in some instances is that people, as a result of being out of jobs, I mean, it's a story that every household knows of. They are unable to pay for their rates and taxes, the utilities, the municipal bills, water and electricity. It means that these municipalities are financially worse off. Their revenue base gets to be eroded, and therefore they don't have a revenue or an income to reinvest it back into this, the maintenance of this infrastructure. So it's something that is structural. It is structural in that persistent levels of high unemployment has got a correlation on the ability of municipalities to pay for their rate and taxes. But these households continue to draw from the grid. You must maintain these assets. And for as long as you don't resolve that calculus, you are going to sit with a bigger problem on the distribution side. These are downstream challenges. Like I said, we are working with municipalities to resolve this. And of course, Kusile, Letabo, Medupi, at some of the stations, like I said, are achieving above that the average target. And of course, there are also low lights, even in these 2 months that we have entered into. So I mean, some of the power stations like Majuba, like Mata, the EAF is between 50% and 60%. And remember that we want to carry everyone above 60%, above, in fact, above 65%. We want everyone to be there so that the weight is equitably distributed. It can be equally distributed because there are some power stations, they really are powering significant amount of megawatt. A Medupi is not an Arnold, if you like. It's an Arnold almost like 5-10 times. So it's important that a 1 percentage point drop in Medupi or Kusile is not the same as a 1 percentage drop in some of the older and smaller power stations. When I say smaller, in terms of the megawatts. So it's important that we have that appreciation. And then there are issues of outage sleep. So it's important that Tutuka number 5, these are some of the outage sleeps. That outage sleep simply means that we have made a commitment to the country that we are going to return this unit by this time. And we failed to return that unit on that specific time. What that does, it just disrupts the planning effort, because then now you have to recalibrate when are you going to take units out as a result of planned maintenance, because that additional megawatts that you thought will be on the grid is not on the grid. Alternatively, if you still continue with your planned maintenance because you have planned it that way and these units are not coming back, the only instrument you have now is to initiate load shedding. And that's why the team is working at that, to ensure that we are able to address these challenges going into the future. So the point I'm making is that although we are 47 days into no load shedding, we know that there are things that we could be doing better, and the team is working at it. And the team has illustrated they've got a track record of improving in areas of low performance, and that's what has given us what we are seeing now. And of course, what we're sharing with you is that generation performance, really a reconfirmation of what has been the case over a period of time. So you can see the 11th of May, the EAF was at about 68%. Yesterday, I think we're at 69.6%. Today, I'm saying we're above 70%. So you can see we're playing in that space. We're a 68%. We want to continue to improve it so that when we enter into this cold period, when the demand begins to surge, you are at those levels, and therefore you don't need to initiate any load shedding or any intensity of load shedding. And you can see again that the UCLF compared this year in May, those dates in May, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, 9th, and the like, they have been down by about 34-38%. So consistently, the amount of units that are out, that are not on load, are coming down significantly. You can see there, we're averaging close to about 34%. So that's a consistent performance. That's not sudden. It's something that has been orchestrated and manufactured over a period of time. And like I said, you are beginning to see the kind of results that we are seeing. And then this is for everyone to see now. Because I think you know that one of the basis of our engagement with the public is that we are going to be transparent, we are going to be candid, and the conversations are going to be robust. So what is this spending on diesel? So you can see in rand value terms, the 5th of May didn't burn. 6th of May, 23 million, 11.9 million. 10th of May, we didn't burn. 11th of May, we didn't burn. Yesterday, we didn't burn. So this you can see that the story is not correct. The story is not true. So it's just the naysayers exceptionally uncomfortable with the fact that the country is making the kind of progress that it's making. And like I said, some of them had an opportunity to lead this august institution. What they've done is to continue its erosion. And what the current team is doing is really lifting the curve, that we are getting it right. We are confident. We will not go back to those days because the team knows what they are doing. Exceptional levels of competence. And of course, naturally, people will be aggrieved that, no, I was there, it means they are banning this. We are not banning this. You have been banning it, we are not banning it. So if you are a flag bearer of incompetence, please don't transfer it to us. What the team has done, we have turned the curve. And I said to the team, we're not going to drive this car using a rear view mirror. That's history. You can't rewrite and revise history. A very difficult period of 3 years. And this board came, made the kind of changes they've made inspired appointments, and we're beginning to see the picture. And I was saying to the team, let's write the future. We are going to be the authors of the future. We are going to restore honor on this page. It is us who are going to restore the respectability of ESCOM. It is us who are going to ensure that indeed load shedding is something of the past, and there will be a chapter written about these men and women who have made it possible for us to achieve this. And that chapter will be written later. It will not be written by us in office. Because there are others, instead of keeping the lights on, they are writing books. We don't write books, we get the lights on. I think it's important that we have that appreciation. We are not here to write books. You will write. We will keep the lights on. These are engineers. And then let the authors be authors. And that's why we had this kind of devastation that we have had, because the lights were not on, but books were written. So that's the kind of something that we want to unlearn from that. There is something that you can draw even from the bed, is that when you have been given this assignment, stick to your assignment and don't allow other distractions. And that's why we are making the kind of improvements that we are making. So you can see the daily OCG comparisons. When you can see that in fact, when you look at the financial year 24, you can see that for an example, the 5th of May, 25 million rands. I think that's the rand value. And then this year, we didn't spend any money. If you look at the 6th of May, last year, we burned 50 million. This year, 6. 7th, 21, this year, 3. 8th of May, last year, 52 million, this year, 3. And then 42 million, this year, 2. I'm sure you know that there's a difference between a 52 million and a 3 million. Is that there's a saving of 48 million. And I'm saying this not to be sarcastic. I suspect that others don't understand it. And I think it's important that we help them. And if you have not proceeded beyond matric, and you have not done arithmetic as you are studying, you can be a leader of a political party. Schooling is very important because it helps you to understand these figures. I will not make an assumption that so the fellow goes out, genuinely he believes that. And I think he needs help. As opposed to us, it's genuine call for help. I really don't know that if last year you spent 28 billion on the 10th of May, and this 28 million, I'm sorry, on the burning diesel, and this year you didn't spend any money, you can't tell that 0 is different from 28. That's the point I'm making. So the point I'm making is that it's a call for help. We'll help them. I think it's important, and that's why we take this moment to share these numbers. And that's why I'm speaking slowly so that he does understand that we are making the kind of progress that we are making. Because we will not allow ourselves to be bashed and almost be defenseless. When these men and women have invested so much, and someone goes into the public and just soils the work that we are doing, because we have disarmed them. I'm talking from a political side. This is not an ESCOM story. It's a story of the 6th administration. We have disarmed those who thought they will weaponize load shedding going into the 29th. They tell you it's sudden, they tell you it's diesel. I've shown you what the numbers are. And I continue to show you what these numbers are. The capacity available, look at this, we're averaging at about 30,000 megawatts. Compared to last year in May, where baseline, we're averaging 27,000 megawatts. So from a capacity point of view, we have added 3,000 megawatts. But the story becomes even much better. When you look at plant maintenance, this year we are 1,100 to 300 megawatts ahead, more than what was the case in May of last year. So you add on that 3,000 megawatts that we have made here to that another 1,000, we are 4,000 megawatts better than where we're at. And what is the good story is that the unplanned capacity loss factor, we have moved it from 17,000 megawatts to about 12,000 megawatts. So essentially it's a delta. A delta is a difference between the two of approximately 5,000 megawatts. That's what we have achieved. And then you say this is sudden. There is nothing sudden about this. There is no magic. It's no black magic. It's science at work. And these engineers are competent. They've illustrated it. Chris, Zandi, and the team across the board, I'm mentioning these two because we are at Kusile. They have done this. And they must be commended for that. Of course, we don't congratulate a fish for swimming because it must swim, but we know where we come from. So it's important that we say keep at it and make sure that we are able to address this situation going forward. So I really want to say to the team, thank you for breaching the 70% EAF. Thank you for ensuring that we are at 47 days of no load shedding and still counting. Thank you very much for the kind of performance now we are seeing at Kusile and many other power stations. But we also know that there are additional power stations that requires attention going into the future. Thank you very much, Stakan.
Thank you very much, Minister. for sharing such valuable insights and updates with us and on a very consistent basis. I think that your commitment to a high communication availability factor as well has really added a lot of value to transparency for all to see the journey that it has been. And in that spirit, colleagues, I wish to now open the floor for questions from members of the media. We'll start with questions in the room, and we'll also take questions online. So, colleagues, by a show of hands, are there any questions? Okay, we'll take you. Any other? Okay, so we've got one question in the room, and then Kutlwano will take us through the online questions. Can you kindly speak up? Because
Sure. My name is Ramokgopa from BBC News. My question is to the Minister. I think in a short soundbite. I got all of that, but it needs to be a little bit concise. What is it that your department has done to ensure that load shedding was kept at bay for such a long period of time? And secondly, what is it that you can say to South Africans currently to, in a form of, let me just rephrase that. Is load shedding going to come back after the election as has been, as has been said by many in the political space, that this is probably an electioneering campaign by the governing party?
thanks, Nomsa. I'm checking once again. Are there any questions in the room before we? Yes, Katla.
Katlego Logori from the SABC. I just wanted clarity on the agreement with the Department of Forest Fisheries and the Ministry with Minister Barbara Creasy. What was the agreement between the Minister of Electricity and Minister Creasy? And could we then see similar arrangements made going forward, looking at the problematic power stations that we still have that will need attention going forward? He said that the expiry towards the end of December. Maybe just clarity around what was the arrangement, and could we then see similar arrangements where other power stations are concerned going forward?
Thank you, Katla. Yeah.
Veronica Mahwadi from Newsroom Africa. Minister, you've spoken quite extensively that what we are seeing is genuine and a sustainable plan to keep load shedding at bay. But I think just for any other South African who's really just had difficulty planning their day-to-day life, what is it that could just hamper the work that the engineers at Eskom have put together and could potentially trip some of the buffers that have been put in place? What is the potential, sort of rock in the road for us?
Thank you, Veronica. Any other questions in the room? Kutlwano, please take us through the online questions.
Okay, we have a question from Lamiz Omaji from News 24. How much of the improvement of Eskom's fleet can be attributed to the return of Kusile's Unit 1 to 3? What is the contribution of Kusile's Units 1 to 3 to energy supply as a percentage? Are the units performing optimally because of the lack of the FGD installation? And then we have a question from William Horn from Network 24. Regarding the record PCLF levels from December until recently, what proportion of the planned outages to conduct the maintenance was scheduled during 2023? From these, how was the usual 18-month lead time for large planned outages shortened? How much in percentage related bonuses has been paid to workers achieving their performance targets since the reintroduction of the scheme? And then we have a question from Press Independent Media. What is the load factor of pump storage in April, and what are they replenished? When are they replenished during the day and in the evening? Can we please get the EAF for all power stations? What is the capex budget this financial year for cost plus coal mines. Did the solar flare over the weekend have any impact on transformers? In 2023, several transformers were impacted. And then the last question from Kyle Cohen from News 24. What is the total expenditure in rand value and load factor of IPP OCGTs for the financial year to date?
Thank you very much for all those questions. We'll now get responses. We'll start with Mr. Eric Shunmagam, who will be followed by the Minister. Thanks.
Hi, good morning, colleagues, and thanks for giving me the opportunity. Minister, once again, I think you covered the salient points. Just then to help where I can, I'm going to go through the issues. Okay, I think, Nomsa, those questions the Minister will respond to specifically. Katlego, I think in terms of that question, the relationship and agreements, the Minister will respond to that as well. Veronica, I think in terms of what could hamper the work, so I think what I need to highlight, it's like planning, any of the parameters, looking at how the financial index does. So what we do is, based with the modelers that we have in Eskom, we do a 6-month winter plan. We also then would do a 6-month summer plan. And based on previous trends, the system operator independently puts together some assumptions. So what we have communicated on the 26th was that there'll be 3 scenarios. We've taken the low case, the low road, which is based on an EAF of 14,000. Now, you need to remember that the system op looks at the past performance and pins it down at 14,000. But from a generation point of view, we have to, with all the work that's being done, trend below 14,000. And what you're seeing right now is below the 14,000. So what we have communicated is that on a low case, the base case, we will potentially get to up to about a stage 2 load shedding. And on the worst case, which is pretty much plus 3,000, on the upper case, we will potentially experience a stage 5. So we've been very open with those scenarios. And generally with scenarios, if those assumptions realize, then you can expect those levels of load shedding. But what I want to give comfort is that from a generation point of view, the reason the likes of Chris and Zandia are employed is to prove these assumptions wrong in terms of let's go negative, right? This morning, as the Minister has highlighted, it's trending at 70.78 EAF. Now, just to give you context, the available capacity is sitting at just over 32,700. So from that point of view, we are comfortable, we are prepared well for winter, right? And if you really look at the winter worst case demand forecast, it's just above 33,000. So based on how the units are performing, we believe we're going in the right direction. This morning, before we came into the briefing, we've just actually hit the below 10,000 mark in terms of breakdowns. So once again, putting us in a better position. So I just wanted to give that context. So in terms of if these scenarios realize, we've been open in terms of what you can expect, but we are trying very hard from generation to bring breakdowns as low as possible. Lamis, just to give you a response to Kusile. Kusile, if you remember last year, it was out for the whole year. So Kusile has pretty much contributed 4.9% to the EAF. And I think that's on the overall system. This morning, Kusile is actually, at 92.9, just close to 93% EAF. And I think with the Kusile 5 and Kusile 6 units coming back, we're going to be sitting in a much better position. So I think that for me is a positive story, because when we initially committed the EAF target to the shareholder, the Kusile units were still operational. And then when we had them fail in October of 2022, it then added to our woes and we couldn't achieve the desired EAF. But I must be honest, it's actually in a very positive way. I also need to highlight, then linked to Kusile, the integration of the 3 stacks, okay, is planned into our planned maintenance, so there's no risk. And then starting from around mid-November to mid-April, each of those 3 stacks will be removed, not all at one stage. It will be individually taken out, and it will be then integrated into the system. The PSGM has given me assurance, or given management the assurance, that in terms of the FGD, now that they've secured a contract with the OEM, now that they've got sufficient spares, and now that they've actually got also the right spares, that unit should actually perform very well. And as you know, when we initially planned the recovery, it was around a 520, because we didn't want to compromise any of the stack emissions. But I can confirm that we are not compromising, and those units can actually push up to 720 megawatts each. So that's a positive story there. In terms of the PCLF, from William Horn, I think I'm not sure I've got your question, but the PCLF that we planned, it was a very conscious decision. Now remember, we take advantage of the school holidays and big plant actually shutting down. So from December to March, there was a deliberate and a conscious effort to do PCLF above 16,000. In fact, over those 3 months, it trended at 16.25. But when you really look at the stats, around January, we went up to 18% PCLF. Now, you need to understand, we could have kept PCLF low, and the direct correlation of not doing that PCLF would have meant it would have contributed to a higher EAF. But it was a conscious effort to sacrifice, do the PCLF, get more reliability into the units. And one of the other factors we report on is when we look at the risk on units, that risk factor is actually dropping. So it was a conscious effort. In terms of bonuses, I don't have the detail, but I can tell you that through the board and negotiated with the shareholder, there were challenges set for the various power stations. These were performance targets set, so it was not free for all. And if you actually delivered on the performance, you actually got the reward. If you didn't deliver on the performance, you didn't get the reward. That's the feedback around that. Helmut, in terms of the load factor, I know I did communicate with you a week ago, but I can give you the update in terms of pump storage. The one thing I can confirm is we are sitting now with a very different position, with us having a good base load and availability in terms of capacity, with our renewables also helping during the day. We actually find ourselves with our pump reserves healthy, which means we don't have to actually use those to actually generate, although we'd like to. But at the end of the day, because it's free, it just means at the end of the day, we're now controlling our pumping hours. The EA for all the power stations, we do have those statistics, and I'm happy to actually email that to you. In terms of the solar flare, I think fortunately we have a leadership group, and one of the managers actually did sensitize us to that. We did see it in the media. I haven't heard of any specific, on the generation plant, any specific damage with regards to the solar flares. So I think that's pretty much what I can give. Kyle Cohen asked the issue on CapEx. Kyle, in terms of our CapEx, there was a conscious effort to secure our CapEx starting last year when the National Treasury gave us a budget of around 9 billion rand per annum, and that is on outage maintenance, which is defined as CapEx. And then over and above that, the other aspect was the issue around refurbishment. So the refurbishment budget averages around 3 billion rand. So the CapEx budget on the generation side excludes, I haven't quoted the figures for PED, but that's pretty much on the boilers. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Eric. Maybe to Nomsa's question, I think what is the best way of keeping load shedding at bay? So it can't be a one-liner. because it's a series of interventions. So the first thing is I made the point that the president unveiled an energy action plan, which was essentially a product of co-creation with multiple stakeholders, business, communities, and also organized labor. So the first point is that we are working on executing a plan. And we are not going outside the plan unless if the obtaining conditions suggest that there has to be a tactical revision, but in relation to, I think, the strategic orientation of that plan, we are executing against that plan. The second one is the stability of leadership. So a board led by Dr. Mteto, then stabilize the management team. So we get to a situation where a group CEO is appointed, the CFO then gets to execute his primary responsibility, if you like, his substantive responsibility as employed, someone who carried the ship, Caleb, and then what they do is also to appoint competent teams across the generation fleet. So they start with the head of generation, Mr. Ngumalo. He had Kusile. Chris was brought to come and work with the team. I can mention Mr. Moyo there, Bruce at Tutuka, and a number of stations they stabilized. So that's the people-related issues, including what Eric was referring to, the performance-related bonuses, so that we are able to uplift the morale. And then the third one was just an articulation of what this coal fleet represents in the immediate future, and the fact that there was the delayed decommissioning of some of these power stations. I mentioned them, Camden, Arnold, and Grootvlei. What that does is it also lifts the morale of the employees, just an appreciation that there's a contribution that they can still make going into the future, as opposed to stations that are coming to the end of life. And then the other dimension is the support they receive from National Treasury, that 254 billion that comes out in tranches. So it has been able to be reallocated. That capital allocation went into those power stations that were identified as the ones that are responsible for over 70% of the unplanned capacity loss factor. We're at it, and Kusile was one of those. Those units have been returned, and you are seeing the kind of improvements you are seeing. So what's the point I'm making is that we must maintain, if you like, that discipline. And that's how you are going to keep it at bay. You have not resolved it. Like I said, you need to have new generation capacity from new players. Private sector going to be very important. The aggressive rollout of rooftop solar solutions, very important. So they're ensuring that you address the issues of permitting and licensing. And then load shedding relative to the elections. I make the point that there is something fundamentally illogical about that argument. That you are suspending, or you are doing some miracle, you put load shedding at bay so that you increase your prospects of winning the election. Let me tell you what puts the administration on the back foot, the governing party, is the fact that people are out of employment. Is the fact that the South African economy is truncated. Is the fact that the outlook for growth is not as optimistic. And this is as a result of what I call the structural constraints, principally load shedding and also the inefficiencies on the logistics side. So if you accept that rational argument, so it's not in the interest of the governing party to have load shedding in the first place, let alone ending it quicker. Because what that does, it diminishes, it erodes, if you like, your electoral prospect. And that's why when the president unveiled the energy action plan in July of 2022, he didn't know that there will be an election on the 29th of May. It's a decision he makes much later. And that decision is not made relative to the progress we are making. And I've taken you through the trend line. So essentially, all of this thing is orchestrated outside what that date is. That date could be anything. But what is important is that we are keeping at the trend line. And I'll keep on repeating myself. I'll not tire when I meet people in the streets, with people, social spaces, public spaces. Is it coming back? No, Eskom has just shared with us the winter outlook. Eric has elaborated on it. That winter outlook says On the optimistic case of your unplanned capacity loss factor of 14,000 megawatts, you'll not see load shedding. If you add the losses, an additional 1,500 megawatts on that base case, you'll get to stage 2. And they ring fence that as the most plausible scenario. And they say if you have an additional 3,000 megawatts of unplanned loss factor, on top of the 14,000, you'll go to 17,000, you're going to get to the worst case of stage 5. But now remember what he has just shared with you and what the number says. That winter outlook makes the point that your base case is at 14,000 megawatts. Today, as we speak to you, you have seen that we are at below 10,000 megawatts. I've shown you that over the past 2 months, we're about at 12,000 megawatts. Even on the basis of that, we're significantly better than what even that optimistic scenario is saying. So that's the point I'm making. But what is the most enduring solution out of this? Is new generation capacity. Eskom's fleet alone is not sufficient. And that's why Eskom is working on new generation, the 3,000 megawatts of gas to power. That's why the reforms introduced by President Ramokgopa makes it possible for us to accelerate the onboarding of new generation capacity. Just the other day, I went to officially unveil the SCATEC project in the Northern Cape. The biggest hybrid project on the continent, 254 megawatts of solar and a combination of battery storage. You need a lot of those to come on board for you to be able to say with a degree of confidence that load shedding is behind us and we are entering conditions of energy security. Because the country's economy must grow, for it to grow, it needs additional capacity. And in fact, the additional megawatts if you look at the curve, must be ahead of economic growth, is the one that will pull economic growth. Is the additional megawatts on the grid. So that's the point we've been making consistently. And then, Katleo, no, the approval by DFFE is not an agreement. It's a set of conditions. So it's not like we said we have a bilateral. We simply present to the minister and say that there's this unfortunate accident occurrence. It undermines our ability to meet our licensing obligations from the emissions point of view to the extent that it relates to the sulfur. And we say to the minister, please bear with us. We want to have a temporary stake for these units to continue to produce so that we save the South African economy. But on top of that, we are giving you a health plan. This plan seeks to suggest that these are the measures we are going to take to mitigate any adverse health implications of people within communities within the surrounding area of Kusile. And then she interrogates that. She says, it's fine. I agree with your health plan. You can make the following adjustments. And then I'm giving you this temporary arrangement. First is that all other emission parameters, they must remain in place. You are not going to breach them. The second one, I accept that you are going to exceed your limits, but then give me the mitigation, and then we present the health plan. And then she says, this is not infinite. You must ensure that you restore the normal conditions, normal in this instance, the initial, if you like, licensing arrangement must come in place by the end of December 2024. And that's why Chris and the team, they are working on that, and Zandi, to make sure that we comply with that. And he says these are a set of conditions. The only way you can start those 3 units is if you commit to meet these conditions. And we said, yes, we'll meet the condition. So it's not an agreement as in sitting. She imposes conditions which are non-negotiable, and then we are complying with that. We remain within the parameters of those conditions, Katlego. And then, of course, Veronica, I think Eric has spoken about what can hamper, if you like, our road to recovery. What are these hurdle rates? Of course, is the units failing. If there could be other issues, are soft issues, and I want to say we mustn't understate them. You still need a workforce that is motivated, a workforce that has got a full appreciation that there's a contribution they must make to the resolution of this question. And I'm confident that here in Kusile and all other power stations, we are beginning to see that transition as a result of the management team that is here in Kusile, Chris, and across the board that Mr. Ngumalo has put in place, and also the apex body in the form of the CEO. There's just that degree of appreciation that we need some degree of elevated enthusiasm on the part of the workers so that they can put their shoulder to the wheel outside the more technical and engineering issues that Eric has raised there. Thanks, TK.
Thank you very much, Minister and Eric, for all the responses. Colleagues, we will now take our last round of questions. Do we have any clarity-seeking questions, follow-up questions? Yes, Katlaho?
Katlaho again from the SABC. Mine is to also just find out, I have the minister saying that they're working with SALGA and municipalities to address some of the concerns and issues coming from these municipalities. We saw ESCOM about last week or a week ago saying that they're approaching the High Court to seek a declaratory order against City Power, looking at the debt that has been incurred, and City Power is not keeping up to its obligation where this debt is concerned. Maybe give us a sense of the challenges that ESCOM is having where this arrangement with municipalities are concerned, and could this then hamper the efforts that the minister have highlighted there to say that they're working with SALGA to try by all means to just understand the challenges that municipalities are going through, especially where infrastructure and those, where infrastructure is concerned. Just give us a sense of what is happening there, the debt and the work with these municipalities.
Thanks, Katlaho. Any other questions in the room? Yes, sir.
I would love the minister to explain.
Can you introduce yourself?
My name is Ezra.
And the
from
media?
BBC.
Okay.
I would love the minister to explain to the people who are not scientists and who are not engineers. The establishment was supposed to be finished in it started in 2008, and it was supposed to take about 6 years. And we are 16 years later now, and it was supposed to have 16 generating units at about 800 megawatts each. When does the minister think this will be finished in terms of this establishment?
Okay. So you're referring to Kusile?
Yes.
Okay.
Because other people don't understand all this other jargon of engineers and statistics. They want to know, we built a hospital
Okay.
with 8 surgeries or 20 rooms or a school. When is this going to be finished, so that people understand we are 16 years behind now. This one.
Thank you. Any other questions in the room? Good one. Do you have questions online?
Yes, we have two. Okay, the first one is from Lamis Amaji again from News 24. Can we get clarity on timeframes over which 70% EAF was measured against? And then the second one is ESCOM said on the 10th of May that financial year was April to June 2024. Is that a typo? That is from Helmo from press. That's all.
Okay. Thanks for the questions. Once again, we'll start with Eric, who will then be followed by the minister. Thanks.
Hi, Ezra. I'll sort of respond in terms of the technical side, right? So in terms of Medupi and Kusile, there has been some hurdles. But having said that, I think what was important is that Ingula overcome all the issues and actually delivering. On the Medupi and Kusile, in 2018, we actually highlighted 6 major defects on all 12 units, okay? So the project actually started in 2018, lots of negotiations with the contractor, and we were able to actually reach, a consensus that these defects were actually introduced when the units were built. I'm happy to respond that on all of the units, okay, if I take Medupi, except Unit 4, the actual design defects have been introduced. There are some issues that we're still working through in terms of the spares in the milling plant, but we've actually looking at Medupi's performance on some weeks averages around 90%. In fact, it's one of the stations identified as producing over 70% EAF. On the Kusile units, I'm happy to also respond that in terms of the 3 units that are running, we've actually introduced those defect changes, and then on 5 and 6, as they come online, 5 now we've done that, and then on 6, as it actually comes into commercial operation, it will actually also be addressed. So I think I can just highlight that from a technical point of view. Yes, there's been some challenges. If you take on Medupi with the FGD, it's been a new technology. It's not been sort of utilized. So those were some of the technical challenges, but we've overcome that. So that's just in terms of a technical response to those units. Lamise, I think the minister was very transparent in terms of we sort of breaching above the 68% on a daily basis, but we also report on 2 other important indicators. We show the actual month to date, which is sort of just above 64, and the year to date, which is just below 60. So I think it's important to take that into context, because as we start now breaching today for the first time above 70%, it means if we start delivering on that, we aspire much more quicker to the target set by the shareholder. So that's the context that I wanted to highlight there. And in terms of helmet, I mean, the financial year is actually from the 1st of April to the 31st of March in any given year. Thank you.
Thanks, Katlego. Just to your question, I mean, on the details of the issues between City Power and Eskom, that's a management issue. I'm sure Eskom at the right time, whoever is designated will respond to that on whether they owe, whether City Power owes them $1 billion or whether as City Power claims Eskom owes them $3 billion. It's a matter that it's a management issue. I'm raising a bigger issue. So if you look at the municipal debt to Eskom, I think now we are close to about 70 billion rands. For Eskom to be able to continue to execute, make the kind of investment that are required, it needs to recover its money from the users. So that's the first principle. And your bulk users, municipalities, are the biggest customers. But also municipalities are sitting with major problems. Those problems is that as they reticulate this electricity, a lot of households are not in a position to pay objectively as a result of the economic situation. And you have a category of customers who choose not to pay. So they've got the means to pay, but they choose not to pay. And then we've got a third category of users. It is those who steal this electricity from Eskom, what in township lingo they call izinyokanyo. So you can see that the municipal revenue base is eroded as a result of subjective and objective factors. And as a result of that, they are unable to meet their monthly obligations to Eskom. And we know that the situation is across municipalities. If you see the situation of Johannesburg, you see the situation of Tshwane, you are big metros, you don't necessarily think that they should be having this issue, but it's a major issue. And then when you go to local municipalities, it's even worse. I mean, we've got municipalities that owe Eskom such astronomical amounts of money that they will not be able to pay Eskom, even if they were to try and do that diligently from their entire revenue. If it was to be paid to Eskom, they will not achieve that even in the next 10 years. So it requires a different conversation. And that conversation with Salga is to resolve that question. First is that Eskom must be paid its dues because Eskom has got obligations to meet. It needs to ensure that it maintains these power stations. Where you buy from IPPs, where you import this, we still meet those contractual obligations. And on the other part is that there are payers who are diligent, that is consumers, and they should not be penalized as a result of those that are delinquent. Those who choose not to pay when in fact they've got the means and the capacity to pay. So you must be very delicate on how you resolve that. And then you've got another category, like I said, of people who just can't pay. So they're either unemployed, they're pensioners, essentially they are on the indigent register of municipalities, and government has agreed that there's a specific allocation of electricity that will be given to them for free. But for as long as some of these infrastructure challenges are not resolved, you are not able to pass on that benefit to these consumers. And then there's an emergence of a new generation players. And what we are finding is that you are energy intensive users. Your big customers to municipalities are the first one to jump ship and have their own generation capacity and or draw from other independent power producers. So what that means is that, again, it reduces, if you like, the fiscal runway of municipalities. So municipalities are over time going to become illiquid, unsustainable, and they will not be able to fulfill their constitutional obligations. So that's the conversation we're having with SALG on how best to resolve this very complex, if you like, calculus. Of course, you can I say that it's going to be very difficult, but SALGA is committed to that conversation. But like I said, on the specific issues, how you deal with city power, how you deal with some municipality is for ESCOM to make that determination. We are answering a more transversal question, which is really about the political economy of electricity, its implication on the SOE, that is ESCOM, municipalities, customers, and the South African economy. That's the question that we are answering. So let me really take the opportunity to thank everyone who has made time to listen to us. Just thank the members of the media. It really means a lot that you take time to make it possible for us to have this update with, if you like, the South African population, industry, and households, and we keep on updating them. So thank you very much. We wish you the best of the day. Thank you.